Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today we have Kashyap Deorah, founder of HyperTrack, the world's largest community of logistic tech builders, building logistics apps that feel like the future. Kashyap, I'm so excited to chat with you, not only about your journey as an entrepreneur, but because it's spanned over a few companies, and not only you've run companies, but you've invested, and also this experience of being between two countries. And I know you've worked with companies both in India, the US, and it's going to be amazing to not only chat about the logistics and the differences between the two of them, but also the similarity that the audience may not know of, and just really get excited about the startups, not only here, but across the world. So before we get started, what were you doing before you founded HyperTrack?
Sure. Hey, thanks for having me on the show, Julian. Before HyperTrack, I started and sold 3 companies over 2 decades, and I wrote bestseller. I invested in a whole bunch of startups, of which 6 or 7 ended up being unicorns.
How did you know what startups to invest in? When people talk about startups that have successful endings to them, what a part of the due diligence process makes you see the magic or the potential within that company to be successful?
Sure. It's for anything you start, you got to try a few things and see what you got right, see what you got wrong, learn from that. The investment cycles usually give you feedback 6, 7, 8 years later, right? Because you invest in tech now, and if the company is going to go under or if the company is going to return you 1000x, you'll only know that many years from now, especially if it's the first check. So it took me a while and a lot of mistakes to understand what works. And quite simply, what I learned, if I'm trying to invest in a space that I feel I understand, it actually is, I make the worst decisions.
Really?
Because as a space you understand, you know too much, right? So the true disruptors, you are, at least I was skeptical of them, saying, oh, but this is fine. How are you going to make money? Or, okay, I see how you'll make money, but how will it ever be profitable? Or you just kind of know too much and you're in your head and you think that you're an expert. And some of the biggest misses of my life were all disruptions coming into an industry which I thought I understood, and I missed writing that check. And on the other side, when I see which are the ones that were successful, it was always when you meet a founder and you go, there's definitely an X factor in this person. There is a sparkle in their eye. There's this, you can tell that there is some sort of X factor and some superhuman strength going on there. And if the market they're looking at makes sense, and if the team they've built around them makes sense, it's usually a very impulse decision to have to be part of their journey. And another way to look at this is this a person you would work with, or is this an idea that I can think of working on? So if that is the case, then investing in them gives me a ringside view to vicariously actually build that company, right? So you're not looking for return, you're looking for a seat at the table, and a seat on the cap table, and just the ride, right? A ringside view. So you can vicariously live that journey.
How do you manage the relationship being a founder yourself and investing with other founders? And obviously, I think founders all have this mentality of things on the ground, pick it up and do something with it. How do you kind of, I guess, relinquish that control when you're investing in companies and working so intimately with founders and having a healthy relationship with not only their team, but also with yourself, and how to communicate the different value you can add, but also not overstep when you think a founder has to learn a lesson themselves in terms of their journey and their growth? How do you manage that relationship?
Oh, absolutely. It's a great question. So in the early days, I used to have opinions, as we all do, about the business, about the product, about the go-to-market, about things like that, right? Which the executive team usually cares about, or the core team cares about, to some extent the board cares about. But it's not something that a small investor should really care about. And I used to, and I realized that it wasn't very useful, and it was somewhat distracting. And either asking them for regular updates, especially live updates, or offering them any sort of business strategy or execution advice, I found was not very useful. But I'll tell you what was useful. So what I learned over time was some of the best deals, they have to let you in, and the world knows that it's a great deal. It's a great founder. It's a great market. So you're usually competing with a lot of other people to just get your check into that company. And once you do that, the reason why the founder chooses to take your money is if they find the conversation with you useful. And the goal then becomes am I the first call for that founder when things go bad? Because founding an entrepreneurship, as you well know, is a very lonely journey, right?
Yeah.
Some of the toughest problems we deal with, we can't talk about with our team, we can't talk about with our shareholders. And in that moment, you want them to be fully open and vulnerable. These are questions around founder dynamics or team dynamics or fundraises or big strategic pivots or big losses in the business, lost a customer, trying to figure out how to deal with the situation. So during those sort of dark times, if you will, how can you be the first call and listening board for the founder? And I think when that listening opens up, the founders see that, if I'm asking the right questions and being the right sounding, they are more open. They find that just in and of itself useful. And then in that, they know that this guy's going to be honest and tell me just point blank and straight about things that I need to hear. Once he's given me a listen, then that's kind of what I go for.
Yeah. And how I always like to think about what founders can do proactively to not only build relationships, but to execute when there's an opportunity for them to, say, secure some round of funding. In your experience, obviously, running 3 companies, having them going through acquisition, investing in other companies, and now on with your 4th company, what can a founder do to better prepare themselves, or what pieces are they typically needing to prepare to, say, take advantage of interest from other investors? We hear a lot of war stories about either founders, whether they don't have their story completely, I guess, put together for the message they want to get across, or maybe their numbers on CAC and LTV are not as sound or foundational, or maybe they don't have a sound foundational idea of their operation costs. What can founders do to better prepare themselves, I guess, on a foundational level to then take the next step and start, whether building in the right direction or taking advantage of investment? Are there some key things that you think all founders should really look into in terms of the internal workings of their business?
Sure. So look, the first and foremost, as a foundational thing, if you're trying to raise money, build a great business. Just the obvious. So build a great team, build a great product, which is differentiated. Users really want it. It's different from how they solve the problem today, and it's unique. They're willing to pay for it, and there's good margins there. The revenue growth. So depending on the market, your business you're in, let's say you're a SaaS company, your revenue growth, sales cycle, churn rate, gross margins, those key metrics have to be super tight and healthy. And that's sort of the baseline. You need to have a great business, which is very investable. And then to build that business often, you need to know what's the story. You need to have a vision, and you need to articulate that vision to your customers, to your team, to your partners, and a version of the same story to the investors, right? So you need to have that clarity of vision and a very simple way to articulate that story so you can bring everyone along. After that point, I think it's really about the trick is to understand the timing of the raise. It more often than not, there's some external factor that makes investors move in a certain direction. Either you find yourself in a hot market, or some IPO or acquisition has happened in that market, or some sort of tidal shift, tectonic shift has happened in that market. And you have to listen for it. You can't invent it. One phrase I use, you don't make the surf, you go ride it. The moon makes the tides. You just have to know when is the right time to show up with the surfboard. So I think the biggest mistake is, no matter how healthy your company is, and of course you want to raise money when you don't need money, that's also very true. You go out surfing when the tide is right. And even if you're not prepared and the tide is right, you drop everything and go surfing. It makes sense to kind of wait and understand the market in preparation for it, put yourself out there and then take advantage of the I guess, not only the environment, but the ecosystem at the time. What is it they say? Luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
That's one of my favorite quotes, because I think it's void of any pedigree that you come with. It really is about the work you put in, and then putting yourself in position where you see opportunity, and then when that matches, it's that much more powerful.
Another phrase I've heard is planned serendipity. But that's basically the yin and yang of you build a great business, and then know when that surfs up.
Yeah. Yeah. Thinking about your background experience, looking at the companies you run before, they're all different types of companies. You ran a phone e-commerce marketplace, it was a table to service kind of payments platform. It was then acquired by OpenTable. And then now you're running a logistics big company or where people could build kind of logistics applications. Yeah. Where do you go to see the market? Are you planning for serendipity in these moments where you're seeing the idea or seeing the opportunity, or what are you actively doing that allows you to not only see, I guess not even a problem, but that there's maybe an inefficiency or an ability to interject new technology into a particular space? How do you find these ideas? Because I think a lot of times as founders, we see something, we want to create a plan of attack, we try to attack it, but maybe it's not exactly right.
Yeah, it's a great question. And the dots always connect in hindsight. It hit me, I was looking back at, hang on a minute, what's the common theme here? Why did I do what I did? And even when you start a company with a certain idea, your friends and investors say, well, you could have been the next blah. Yeah. But you ended up being the next blah. Why? Right? So in those key moments, why did I make the decisions that I made? And it took some meditation to also figure this out. So I guess the trend you see, my first company right out of college was a blogging platform. It was blogging before there was blogging. Mm-hmm. It was giving writers and creators the power of the internet to go express themselves. The second company was a phone commerce marketplace where I was giving small businesses and merchants, local merchants, an open platform to go sell their products and services. Mm-hmm. In the third company, which was mobile payments enablement for restaurant diners, my key customer actually was the restaurant. Yeah. I was giving restaurants a way to provide a great experience to the customers and turn tables faster and get higher tips and so on. And now with HyperTrack, what I'm doing is I'm helping all the entrepreneurs who are building fieldwork and logistics apps, especially because the world is going on demand and the workforce is going gig. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of new technologies to build. Yeah. I'm building an API that helps them build out those apps and get to market faster, better customer experience, better productivity, all of that good stuff. So it seems like the pattern here is that my DNA is to enable entrepreneurs. Yeah. And whenever I see that there is a big market shift happening and I can democratize or level the playing field in that market and create a meritocratic way for entrepreneurs to go express themselves and build out their ideas and be successful, that's what gives me joy. That's what brings me out of bed every morning.
Yeah. It's amazing to see the common thread. It is the enabling of other entrepreneurs. And I'd love to dive into a little bit of HyperTrack and what was the incumbent before HyperTrack in regards to other companies building these shipping and logistics or field operation logistics platforms before? Were they just doing it all themselves from the ground up? And how much more efficient is the process now that they have something like HyperTrack to fall back on?
A great question. So by default, what would a company do if they're building the driver app for on-demand gig work or building the dispatch system to figure out which workers should take on what job? And then did they actually show up at the job? How long were they there? Did they do the pickup or the delivery at the right place, right time? How do I give an order tracking link to the customers? To build out stuff like this before HyperTrack, you basically had to stitch up three pieces of technology: the mobile OS, right? So Android and iOS, the cloud technologies like Amazon or pick your favorite cloud, and maps technologies, right? Google Maps or competing sort of services. So you had to stitch these three up. Think of how Uber or DoorDash or Instacart, Gojek, these kind of companies built out, investing billions of dollars in creating that sort of location and mapping technology for the future of commerce. What HyperTrack does is, instead of you stitching up mobile, cloud, and maps, and each one has a different cost associated with it, different skill associated with it, the time it takes to build and then the time it takes to operate it, just roughly hand waving, let's say 6 to 9 months to get something out. Yeah. And then a constant ongoing optimization to make sure that the unit economics are under control and predictable. Yeah. All of that with HyperTrack, you can do within 2 sprints. And within a developer timeline, 2 sprints is essentially, a sprint is 2 weeks. So within a month, you are up and running with Uber-like quality and in infrastructure. And then you're paying for what you use, you're paying per order. You're not worried about how much maps cost or cloud cost or development cost, maintenance or DevOps cost is going in it. All you care about is at this much per order, I'm getting this functionality.
Yeah.
And I get to build my application my way because it's an API, right? So I still control the user experience. I still control the workflows. I still control the integrations into my system. So infrastructure as a service for logistics and workforce.
Yeah. What are some of the most interesting companies that you've helped enable or worked with to help enable in speaking of your customers? I was talking to another founder the other day, disrupting the cannabis industry by allowing this service to become, or they're creating almost like an ice cream truck service where whatever kind of merchandising or products is within vehicles, and they not only geo-track those vehicles, they collect their inventory, and they have this really, really sophisticated process built out. And that's one instance, but he was talking to me about all these other opportunities to get consumers the products that they need, whether it's snacks, whether it's cannabis, whether it's building a shelf at home and getting the materials you need. What are some of the most exciting companies that you've seen utilize not only your technology to connect their customers with, whether what product or service that they're doing, and what are some of the, I guess, potential use cases that you haven't seen yet that you'd be excited to see?
Sure. So, what was very interesting in the HyperTrack journey is, see, when we think of on-demand and gig work, the image that comes to our mind is ride sharing, food delivery, grocery delivery, and you extend the grocery category to something really broad to all kinds of consumables. You mentioned cannabis, and there's all kinds of categories where this shows up. To our surprise, the whole flex work, gig work, and on-demand phenomenon is if I told you that oil and gas companies, heavy industry, construction companies and energy companies and big telecom, utility and media companies, banking services, a lot of fintech sales reps, education companies where you have large field forces. All these large industries are building workforce app and logistics apps for the future and end up being HyperTrack customers. So let me give you an example where the labor market of the US, all the hourly wage labor market is actually getting reorganized into this flex work marketplace. I think gig work is now something like 0.5% of entire American GDP, something like more than half a trillion dollars and growing. So what's really happening is the next monster.com or the job marketplace will be shifts that are listed on a marketplace and employers basically buying shifts and workers selling shifts. You're not looking for a full-time job. You're not looking for a weekly or even an hourly contract. You're selling by the shift. So this phenomenon seems to be happening across industries. Your retail warehouse workers, your restaurant workers, your construction workers, and so on. So within that flex work marketplace, we have a really strong presence. HyperTrack is used by some of the largest flex work aggregators. In terms of future where things are fascinating, a lot of the field service and field sales, sort of old school, boring enterprise businesses, they are digitally transforming batching work through apps to the field force, to automating the field service using location and mapping. A lot of those projects are going on with HyperTrack, and that excites me.
Tell us a little bit about the traction. So you obviously, HyperTrack, I think, been around for 6-7 years. So you've had a significant amount of time to build and connect people. What's exciting about what you've done so far, and what are you excited for the next part of your journey leading into not only this year, but the years to come?
Absolutely. So for the first many, many years, we were completely a bottom-up developer shop where we had our APIs available on the internet. We wrote some tech blogs. We wrote some sample apps, open sourced on GitHub, and developers would just find us. So developers would be building out use cases and they'd say, well, this is turning out to be harder than I thought. Let me look. And they found us. Often we were referred by one developer to the other. So we got tens of thousands of developers signed up on HyperTrack before our VP of marketing joined us.
Wow.
And our business, and you see from a lot of those developers, most of them are tinkering with their projects at any given time. There's a few hundred projects live on HyperTrack in the free tier. Within that, we would figure out who are the real businesses and which one is going to grow and deliver revenue. What we learned was while the bottom-up product-led growth motion got us from 0 to 1, we need to now understand from this, which are the right target verticals, which are the industries, which are the right target persona that we need to go after. So we hired a VP of marketing who's stellar, experienced guy. He's built 3 unicorns before, understands how to get those customers in through the door. Got ourselves a VP of sales who's experienced with selling logistics tech, with selling telematics, again, with unicorns, decacons in the past, and just unleashing them to, hey, listen, let's go get all the flex work aggregators in the world. Let's go get all the field service, field sales, whoever's building out in-house or for enterprises. Let's get those. So that's the journey we started about 2 quarters ago.
Yeah. And
we are starting to see our first few contracts with the enterprises come out of that. So that part is interesting because that gets our revenue into a whole different trajectory.
Yeah.
We're in the 1 to 10 journey in that.
Yeah. I love the 0 to 1 and 1 to 10 because it really does kind of identify the process of finding your product market fit. You go test out your solution, you identify who's going to be using it, but also the viable, whether it's customers or businesses, I'll say customers in this point, who are going to be the hyper users, and then really just build around that and build around the not only that persona, but also what they're using and how often they're using it. When you think about the...
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
So during that process, not having sales or not having marketing can actually be, I'm not recommending every company do that.
Yeah.
Because every context is different, but it helps because you're seeing the signal through the noise, right? There's a purity in that product market fit that people really want it. They're coming to you and getting what they want and what it takes to make them successful through the product, through our support. You get the magic formula going, and then you're ready for bringing professionals in and saying, all right, let's make a real business out of it.
Yeah. When you think about the macroeconomics or even just, I guess, the micro environment, what are some of the biggest challenges that HyperTrack faces today?
Sure. So look, I think as we go to larger companies, things happen through committee. People need to be convinced, and most importantly, the CFO or the person holding the budget. And in current climate, I think people are really scared. There's a lot of fear around how to manage cash flows, what the future holds. There's this deep feeling of uncertainty. So the good thing is people are buying stuff that's absolutely necessary. Right?
Yeah.
So we'll see, and that reduces churn because you're buying something that you're actually going to use, and that bar is high, and we've already crossed that bar, so we feel good about that. The part which is going a little slower is people are worried, and in this scenario, they usually defer to the safer option. Sometimes the safer option is do nothing, defer the purchase, especially for a category creation kind of company like HyperTrack, or it's let's go with the hyperscalers, right? Let's just buy that extra thing in the cloud. Let's buy that extra thing in the map technology, which kind of bridges the gap, but not really. Yeah. But no one gets fired for buying a Google or Amazon, right? The phrase used to be no one gets fired for buying IBM, right? No one gets fired for buying Microsoft. Now it's no one gets fired for buying from Google, Amazon, Microsoft. So that's our biggest sort of challenge in closing enterprise deals.
Yeah. If everything goes well, what's the long-term vision?
Yeah, so 1 million developers are building fieldwork and logistics apps as we speak. That number is only going to increase. Yeah. I see this as the future of commerce. The fact that customers, whether it's consumers or businesses, tap a button and expect things to move in the real world and come to them. And the other is the workforce that's bringing stuff to them is a flex work, gig work kind of workforce. This phenomenon is the future of commerce. Yeah. And we're increasingly in a world where every company is a software company. So people want to build things their way instead of just buying off-the-shelf software and letting others decide how they run their business. They want to run the business their way. So we're enabling these millions of developers and essentially hundreds of thousands of companies that want to build the fieldwork and logistics apps, and we're helping them get there faster, get there better.
Amazing. I always like to add the next round of rapid fire questions. I call them my founder FAQ. So I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire questions and we'll see where we get.
All right.
First question is, what's hard about your job?
People. It's always people. It's about listening to them, understanding their fears and stresses, and I guess their beliefs.
Yeah.
Which really drive their behavior and therefore the outcome. So whether it's customers or team or investors or partners or just understanding, listening to people, understanding their beliefs and aligning.
Yeah. But thinking about with your experience of building in two different countries and startups and kind of working with two different ecosystems, what's some similarities and some differences that the audience may not know of building companies in different countries?
Yeah, I'll answer that question. I'll cheat a little bit instead of telling you that what the similarities and differences are, because it's such a deep thing, I can talk at length about it. So what I can tell you is it's becoming more equal every day. The world's becoming smaller. It's becoming more similar than different.
Yeah.
And the way to do business, sitting anywhere in the world, doing business anywhere in the world has become easier than ever and will continue to get easier.
Yeah. It is incredible with the globalization push of not only technology, but with infrastructure, and everyone's motivated to be online, and also with cryptocurrency kind of injecting just excitement of being able to move things across borders. I think it's becoming more and more available and exciting. So it's awesome to hear that you're seeing that as well from your point of view.
Yeah.
And something that I think we're going to all continue to see as time moves on. What's one piece of advice, or backtrack that? What's one thing that you were not so good early on in your career as a founder that you're better at now?
Oh man, there's a whole bunch of things. Which one should I pick? I want to talk about application software and infrastructure software, or about leadership and dealing with people, about doing business cross-border. I mean, I would say the biggest change would be what I've learned is at a very primal level, right? This is a very personal sort of answer, is the younger I was, the more I was chasing money and fame.
Yeah.
And although I was thinking, I'm on a mission and I don't really care about that stuff, but no, I was definitely seeking validation from the world in terms of money and fame. And I think the biggest change has been there's this sense of freedom from that drug, if you will, right? Where it's like you have a long-term vision, you can play the long game, you have a point of view, you're only listening to the market and the customer. You're not really worried about validation from people or the number of likes you get, right? I think that's probably the biggest change.
Yeah. I love that. Very honest answer. I love that. Another question is, if you were to wave a magic wand, what's one thing you would wish for your business to have today that you whether you can have it or not, or whether it's in the near future, what's one thing that you wish you could have right now?
More signed contracts.
Yeah.
I mean, that don't we all want more revenue?
Yeah.
But that's the honest answer. I think we've got a phenomenal product. We've got great infrastructure that handles scale. We handle more than 1 million orders a month on the biz. I'm very excited about our go-to-market being more enterprise and contract oriented. We're very close to signing many, many awesome contracts. So my magic wand would be in that pipeline, just make things move faster.
Yeah. What we all wish for sure. Being that you've had such a wealth of experience building companies and going through acquisition, is there an acquisition that you would have done differently? And what would you have done differently?
I mean, most acquisitions fail.
Yeah.
And I've been both on the sell side and the buy side of acquisitions. I've probably dealt with at least a dozen acquisitions in my life and integrating them. And I think most acquisitions fail. Within that, I would say, maybe I've seen a slightly higher success rate, not that much higher. I would say the biggest friction in acquisitions is for the founder to be okay to lose their identity. When you sell a company, no matter how large or small, no matter whether it's a business acquisition or acqui-hire, if founders hold on to their identity or the ego of the company, as that, it becomes harder for them, for the team, for the acquirer. So it should be very clear that when you are selling your company, and look, I'm obviously talking from my experience of what I would do differently for my first few acquisitions.
Sure.
I would lose my ego sooner.
Yeah.
Which would make things better for everyone involved.
Yeah. I love the honesty in those answers. And last question, obviously, before we get into, I would like to ask founders about their plugs and where we can find support. But before we do that, whether it was early in your career or now, what books or people have influenced you the most?
Sure. I'd say people first, just worked with a lot of awesome people who I now consider as mentors. The way I relate with my dad is also the way I relate to a lot of these really senior people, where we're more friends, we're more peers, we're working together, solving a common problem. And in doing so, you build a relationship where you learn a lot from them. And they feel like they want to spend time with you. A bunch of people who invested in me and are basically my career dads in that sense. So Rakesh Mathur, my first investor, and also my investor in every company I've started. And these were both founders at Junglee. Ashish Gupta, Venki. These were all founders of a company called Junglee that was sold to Jeff Bezos in 98. They've been investors in my companies. Naren Gupta, the person who started Nexus Venture Partner, he invested in HyperTrack 5-6 years ago, made that bet, learned a lot from him. And God bless his soul, he's no longer with us, but I just learned so much from him while we worked together on HyperTrack. But it's a really long list of people. In terms of books, I do read quite a bit of books and nonfiction. Somehow the nonfiction books have been the most influential on me over time. I would say the last two that I really liked were, I read Atomic Habits during during the New Year's, when New Year's resolutions were getting set. It was a great time to do it. I snapped into my New Year's resolution so well thanks to that book.
Oh, wow.
So it's made a big impact on me personally. Just diet, exercise, meditation, that kind of stuff, just getting those habits going. And the one right before that was How to Change Your Mind, Michael Pollan. So that was just mind blowing. And over the course of reading that book, I realized Michael Pollan is a Berkeley professor. So it's just a fascinating area, which I had no idea about, and just learned a lot about. And
being that you're in Berkeley now, have you met up with Michael Pollan?
I would love to. I'm trying to figure out a way to do so.
Yeah.
There is a center. I think he started a center for psychedelic studies at the university. So at least I know one place where I can go find him. And I think he's a fairly decorated professor of journalism. So I kind of know where to find him. I'll go one of these days.
Yeah, you definitely should. I feel like it'd be a super cool meeting, and you have to report on it back on the show, maybe in the future when we do a round 2 of these episodes, or even a town hall almost. But I know we're at the end of the show, Kashyap, and I want to give you a chance to give us your plugs. Where can we find HyperTrack? Where can we find you? Give us your LinkedIn's, your Twitters, everything that we can use as an audience to support, and maybe even start using this technology and being part of the journey.
Absolutely. So hypertrack.com, there's a free sandbox to get the API keys and start building out your fieldwork and logistics apps. We are just one phone or chat away to help you build what you want. To follow me on Twitter, Right Half was the name of my first company, like right half of the brain.
Yeah.
So Right Half is my Twitter handle as well. Go follow me there, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn or follow me on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Kashyap, it's been such a pleasure not only learning from you as a founder, but also your journey and things maybe that you've done, but also that you've done differently, the different pieces of advice, how you look at businesses. But yeah, please, sorry, go ahead.
I have one more shameless plug, and that is between my third company and the current one, I wrote a book which became a bestseller in India. It's called The Golden Tap. So if you like the topics I was talking about, and especially want to know the history of Indian startups chronicled over 2 decades, get The Golden Tap from Amazon and tell me what you think.
The Golden Tap. Yeah, we'll have to do that. We'll have to make sure to give a code or something to the listeners. Amazing. Awesome, Kashyap. Well, again, thank you so much for being on the show. I hope you enjoyed yourself and hope to see you again in the near future.
I had a lot of fun, Julian. Thank you so much for having me. This was awesome.
Of course.